What's up, everybody? This is Zarek Simmons, also known as Styles Major. In today's video, I'm going to share a very, very powerful testimony, and I'm going to take you guys deep into a dive about everything that led me to where I am right now. I ask that you stay and watch this video to the end because there's some things that I'm going to reveal to you guys at the end and also throughout the length of this testimony that are important. So pay attention to details because I'm going to be going back and forth. So we're going to start with my upbringing. And throughout my life, I've had multiple encounters with evil spirits, um, with demonic energy, with God energy, with Jesus, with angels. Um, and I'm going to explain to you kind of how those things have manifested. Um, so, my childhood, my earliest memories were watching my father drink until oblivion, punching holes in the wall, showing people his guns, um, seeing my aunt come home with black eyes from her boyfriend beating her up. Um, all I can say is that the first 10 years of my life were a breeding ground for somebody like Lucifer. My family was plagued with so much mental illness, it wasn't even funny. Um, Grandmother struggled with manic depression, father bipolar, schizophrenia, manic depression, uncle, all those things, depression, anxiety, manic depression, all these things. I mean, the list goes on. And I truly believe that certain states and energies is the breeding ground for not Jesus, but for Lucifer. And I'm not going to pretend like I was some kid that went to Bible school and knew all about the word, but I knew what negative energy and positive energy was. And during this time in my life, my dad was being ravaged by his addiction, by his demons. He was a young man born in San Francisco, LA, one of the two, raised to two very successful jazz musicians. My grandfather being black from Sicily Island, Louisiana, and then my grandmother being white um, from Minnesota. And they were married in the 60s, 70s, when it wasn't really cool for black men to be marrying rich white women. Um, and there was a lot of trauma, a lot of abuse on his mother's side of the family, and it was passed down to my father. Mind you, I just want to jump forward a little bit. His sister was my aunt, and we were very close. And she passed away from a fentanyl overdose in 2013. My dad is currently fighting for his life. He's completely strung out on fentanyl and opiates. He has a heart problem. None of us have heard from him in months. We don't know if he's alive or dead, but um, he's been spiritually dead for a long time. However, me and him had last year got a chance to catch up and make amends, and so we're in a good place. What I'm getting at is that both of my grandparents' children, um, actually all three of the children, because I have an uncle Jeff who was basically like my dad's brother, is his cousin. They're either have died, deceased from drug overdose, and or on their way. And I believe that Lucifer, Satan, the dark energy, uses addictions, traumas to control and to have his way with humans. Now, I believe that most people who use drugs and alcohol is to deal with the pain of their trauma, but then that same addiction is what destroys any chance of them getting better. Um, so moving forward with the story, as a child, I felt like I didn't get much attention. I had five other brothers and sisters, including my youngest half brother, who didn't really live with us, but both of my parents were young and they were caught up in their own trauma bonds and their own wounds and things of that nature. And so there was a lot of void when I was young. And I remember just crying for no reason when I was younger. But if we want to talk about the spiritual realm, the first time I was ever introduced to real evil. My aunt, Raisha, who passed away in 2013 from a fentanyl overdose, she was very young. When I was 4 or 5 years old, she was only like 20, 21. And so she was like a big sister, and I like hung out with her every day. And she was very into tarot card readings. And so as a young boy, tarot card readings were normal for me at 4 or 5 years old. I knew what the tarot was, I knew what it was, and I was getting mine read. I did not know that we were inviting spirits into our home, spirits into our lives. And I remember my aunt taking me to this witch lady who was part of the occult, and she was a warlock. I don't know. I don't know all the terms, but that was the first time in my life I felt the real presence of the devil. Um, I walked in that house, and I'm 4 or 5 years old. I don't know nothing about nothing, but I know something. You know what I mean? And it's that intuition, and that intuition, I've been able to use that as a guide for me. And I walked in that house, and it was dark, and there was just all this occult stuff, weird crosses, and all kinds of weird stuff. It was like something out of one of those exorcism movies or something. Like, and I just remember the lady. She had, like, no lie, you guys, had a crystal ball, and I was like, "This is like, is this serious? Like, people really do this shit?" And I just felt this evil thing, and I remember she kept staring at me, and she just gave me the most evilest, creepiest vibe. It was almost like, yeah, he's young, he doesn't know what's going on, and I remember telling my aunt, like, I really want to go, and she was basically there to do like a fortune telling on my aunt, and she told her a bunch of really messed up stuff. And I remember both of us left, and we were feeling a type of way about it, and we didn't even finish it because I told my aunt I wanted to go, and then I was scared. You know, I was 4 or 5 years old, and so that was kind of the beginning of that dark energy coming into my life. When I was 7 years old, there was a lot of trauma going on. My dad was very verbally abusive and neglectful to his children, especially me. I don't know why. He always constantly said he didn't love me, that I wasn't his son. Um, Whenever I didn't do what he wanted, then well, I wasn't loved. Um, and, you know, that really affected me. And I started numbing out at a young age. And with all those things going on, um, I uh, I would have these weird sleepwalking episodes after that time that I visited that witch with my aunt, and I would. It was weird, you guys. Like, I was semi-conscious, but I felt almost like I had a concussion because I've had one before in football, and I wasn't in full control of my body. I was led by some type of demonic energy, and my brother and my mom told me that they would see me walking around and they'd be scared, and I would just be like walking in people's rooms and shit, and they were like thought I was possessed or something, and I remember for those couple years, I kept having these reoccurring dreams. Uh, but they were real. And for some reason in the dream, I always had to end up sleeping in my bathroom. It was like some Donnie Darko shit, man. And I felt like I was haunted, like I was being tormented by demons as a kid. I didn't know what it was. And it was weird. And I haven't experienced those since we left that house that we lived in where all that trauma took place with the physical abuse. Um, my dad, I never seen him physically hit my mom until the end of my dad being living with us. He assaulted me. One day I came home with a toy, and I think he was just struggling. There's no excuse, you know. I'm still trying to make excuses for him. There was no fucking excuse for what he did. I took a toy in the bathtub. He took me out of the bathtub and threw me 7 feet into a wall. I didn't even cry because at that time I just learned how to numb myself, and I was always a tough kid. And my mom just had it. And that same night, or maybe a week later, they got in one final last fight, and it was the first time I saw my dad physically abusing my mom, and I still have post traumatic stress. I know that there's people out there that have seen crazier shit, and I'm so grateful I didn't have to see my mom die or anything like that. But my dad was wrestling with my mom and punching her. and I was scared, and I fucking hated my dad at that time. I didn't know why he was such an asshole, and I took my brother's baseball bat, and my brother confirms that I did this, and I just swung as hard as I could. I was like 11 or 10 years old. I was a decent sized kid. I was maybe 120 pounds, I don't know, and 130 pounds, and I crushed his back pretty bad, and it disabled him. And my mom smashed his hand with the stereo and shattered his hand, and then he whimpered up like a little softie and cried and all that shit, and I don't know. And then the next morning, my parents were acting like everything was normal, but at that time. It was time to leave. And I remember the last time that we lived with my dad, it was so bad. The devil was in my dad, man. Like, you want to talk about possession? People think it's all like exorcism. No, I seen my dad become possessed by negative thinking, by abuse, by his demons, by his alcoholism, by his trauma, and he took it out all on his children. And it was so bad towards the end that we were all scared of him, and we waited until he took a shower, and we all packed up in my mom's car, and we went and stayed with my aunt, who was really my grandmother's sister, but we called her auntie. She herself was a functional alcoholic, but she had a good job and had a home, and she was the most loving person that I knew. And we stayed there, and after that, my mom got a really good job. We got lucky. She got a good job for the state. We moved into a middle class house, bought a car, and that life from my past seemed to be over. It seemed to be that chapter was over with. Um, but I was young and confused. And during that time, those first 10 years, my brother very much got into Christianity. He had some older men who taught him the way. And so I was very influenced by my brother. So I started going to church and praying at a young age, even though I didn't know what was going on. Um, but I wanted to be like my brother. I wanted to be like Bone Thugs and Harmony and DMX and POD and all these musicians who talked about God. And, that's kind of how those years went. And, throughout my teens, I prayed all the time. I believed in God. I didn't start questioning God until I was in my mid 20s, and we'll get to that. But the first time I got saved, I was 14, 15 years old, my freshman year, going into my freshman year. And we got sent to a Christian school with uh, my sisters. And we didn't really want to go. We weren't really into church at the time. I was listening to G Unit and skateboarding, and God was really the last thing on my mind. I was just a kid, and but we went, and there was a bunch of cool kids, and I was just like, man, these people are so nice, and like there's such a warmth about them. I was like, I thought it was too good to be true. I remember the first 2 days we were like calling my mom, trying to get her to pick us up, but something happened. Um, the Holy Spirit came into all three of us one night, over worship, and the pastor was talking about those of us that were fatherless and father wounds, and they sang some type of song, but my sisters can attest to it. Like, it spoke to all of us spiritually. Like, Jesus was in that room, and we all were crying, and it was like a really beautiful release to see my sisters and me experience that. And then after that, the rest of the week, we loved it. And when we had to leave, we were so angry. But that changed us, and we started listening to a lot more Christian-based music like POD and Stacey Orico, and I kept that throughout high school. I prayed every single night. I didn't go to church that much, but I believed, I believed in Jesus and God, even though I didn't have all the knowledge. And basically, during those years, I did not struggle with any kind of addiction. My mental health was stable. My life didn't start coming to a destructive state until I experienced something that, I wouldn't wish on anybody. And that was, I mean, I could list it off. So many deaths in my family in a short period of time. I lost my aunt, the one who introduced me to tarot at a young age. I lost her to fentanyl overdose. Then my grandmother passed away at an early age. My Oma that I have tattooed right here, she was like my best friend. Um, as a grandmother, she always kept it real, always told me the truth. Um, she had been through a lot, World War II Germany, a lot of trauma, sexual trauma. My great grandfather was really sick after the war, and she had my grandmother had like 4 or 5 kids from like 3 different guys. Um, my mom's dad's black. My uncle and aunt, her half brother and sister, their dad's black. So like my grandparents were didn't care about race, and both of my parents are mulatto and mixed. Where I'm getting at is lost grandmother. Then I lost my uncle Mike, who was like my father figure at a young age. He died at 49. Um, I'm going to get into some of these premonitions that Jesus gave me during the deaths of these family members that really led to a lot of my addiction and guilt. And my uncle Mike was a soft-spoken guy, and he had struggled because his wife had cheated on him. She wanted to leave him. Um, Long story short, I'm not going to go too deep into that out of respect for her and him, but it really affected him, and I just noticed something was not right with him. Something, and he was not himself. I could tell something was wrong. And was it because he was dying from a broken heart? I don't know, but he had given himself to Christ years prior, and I never thought he'd be that kind of a guy. And towards the end of his life, he started telling us that he loved us and started being more emotional. And he was kind of the guy to teach me to be a man and just suck up your feelings. But I got to see him get saved and all that stuff. And where I'm getting at is, the last Thanksgiving we ever had. We would go to his house every year for like 15 years. And I started drinking at that time out of fun, not really because anything was wrong. And I just didn't want to show up. And I had like this premonition that said, this is going to be the last, possibly the last time you ever see your uncle. And I was like, that's like my intuition or God talking to me. I was like, that's stupid. And, sure enough, it was actually the last time I ever spent Thanksgiving with him. He died just a few months later. And that really messed with me, like the guilt, and knowing what he was going through at the time. And I just wasn't there. I was so selfish and thinking about myself. But I remember he texted me and he said it was something that he never really would say, which would be emotional. He said, I really need you right now. And I was like, that's really weird for my uncle to say that. He's never really got emotional with me. And, you know, that was so fucking hard to deal with, that guilt. And shortly after that, my grandmother passed away. Like, oh, she actually passed away. I said before, but she actually passed away after her son. And then a year after that, my twin sister, I'll get into our relationship. Her son passed away from a rare heart disease at 1 years old. The premonition on his life is even crazier because I had a dream. They say twins have like a certain understanding, and I had a dream the night before I was supposed to go visit my sister, um, and in the dream, I'm trying to remember, but she said that something was wrong, and the next day I woke up and I didn't think anything of it, and I started driving to Tacoma General Hospital, ironically, where me and her were born, and she, my mom called me and told me that her son didn't make it, and I was just really upset because I had drove up there a couple days prior, and I wanted to go see him, but they uh, they wouldn't let me because he was in the ICU, and so I just was there to support my sister, and I just couldn't believe what happened, and that was probably the darkest chapter of my life. To see my sister, her, my brother-in-law go through something like that, and mind you, they had 3 beautiful kids already, Trinity and Naomi and Ava, beautiful girls that know and love God. They all had to suffer that. And after that chapter, I really started to experiment with drugs cocaine, ecstasy, marijuana, and of course, alcohol. Um, I I didn't care about God anymore. I said if there was a Jesus and if he's a God, he's not mine. Because how could he do this? How could he kill all these family members of mine? I was ignorant. I didn't understand. Mind you, me and my sister have been each other's closest family members since we were kids. I still remember, walking to preschool together and just all the memories we've had as kids and the trauma, the hard nights laying on the couch together and comforting each other because we didn't have anyone else. Our parents were gone, and me and my sister had a really awesome music career in high school, and we had each other's backs. We were like each other's cheerleaders, and to this day we're super tight, and God has a divine blessing on our lives, but um, her story was wild as well, and I'm going to get more into that. Um, the saddest day of my life, was showing up to my nephew's funeral. I was drugged up on cocaine and alcohol, and that wasn't even enough to numb the pain. I had to wear glasses, and I just showed up there, and I remember just the darkness and seeing his little sisters, my nieces, cry. And at that point, I didn't really care about if I lived or died anymore. I was angry at God. I hated life. Mind you, at that time, I actually was very successful in my music career. I'd been creating music since I was 10 years old. I blew up on YouTube. I had a top 100 song. The song has over 20 million views now. It's called Dreams. It happened when I was 23. I manifested it. I told everyone that I was going to get this video, it was going to make me famous, and it did in many different countries. I didn't blow up like a Post Malone, but I was pretty popular. Um, but it didn't matter because during my biggest blessing, I had my worst times with all my family members dying. Um, I would come in and out of sobriety after that and try to make peace and try to go to church and try to understand God. But then once again, another death happened. My uncle Brian, he was special needs. He was autistic. He'd experienced a lot of sexual, physical, bullying, abuse as a child. When he was 8, he was born dead. He wasn't supposed to make it. He was mildly retarded, but he was my best friend, And not to sound, for you guys to laugh, but he was kind of like Cuba Gooding on that radio movie. He was a special person, best basketball player I ever knew, and we just had a very close bond, And I seen him struggle with schizophrenia, which I believe was demons attacking him. Um, I've seen some crazy things that happened with him see things that were there, him seeing the devil, him telling me that he's seeing the devil, um, all kinds of things. And we were very close. And he got a heart transplant when he was 18, and he lived to be 40 years old. And this is the craziest part of this testimony is God sent some angels down for me before he passed away. I went and visited him 2 weeks before he passed away, and I could tell he was white in his face, and that's usually a sign of organs failure. But I didn't want to believe, that he was going to go because who's going to play basketball with me? And basically, I went to bed. I knew that he was, I didn't know that he was dying. And I went to bed one night, and once again, I had another premonition from God, and I saw my uncle from heaven. From heaven, he was in these clouds, and uh, he said they call me Zizo. That's my nickname. He said, Zizo, I need you. Zizo, I need you right now. I'm scared. And I literally woke up at 4 in the morning, and my phone was ringing. I was wide awake. I had my phone on vibrate because I was just worried that night that something was wrong. And it was my mom, and she said that he didn't make it. I just felt really guilty because uh, I wasn't there. So I wasn't there, and a couple of my other family members were able to make it. and I just didn't make it. And I thought that I was like his best friend, and it was like in his he needed me there. So that led me onto a really that was the beginning of the end for me. After that, I still was having a lot of success in the music industry. My music career kind of slowed down, but I got hired by multiple major record labels as a digital marketer, and I was making a good living. I and I was partying. I partied every weekend, did more cocaine than fucking I possibly know how to do. I entered a relationship with a woman who is a Satanist. I didn't know it at the time, but she was met her at a party. She was a really pretty girl, and we just connected. And she was like, "Do you want me to give you a tarot card reading?" And I said, "Yeah." Like my aunt used to give me those, and so like I immediately like clicked with her. And she's from LA originally, and then she moved up to where I live in Olympia, Washington, and we just connected off that. And we didn't even have any physical relationships for the first couple months, but we grew with each other. But this woman had a lot of occultist type things in her home, a lot of weird shit, ram horns and 666 and pentagrams, and it felt really eerie with her. And she would smoke weed all the time and drink, but she was like actually a really nice person. And she would tell me like, "Look, I'm not really that deep into it." And I'm like, "Are you just having an identity crisis? Like, what's up?" But I had her take all that stuff down because it was just creeping me the fuck out. And she would do tarot readings on me and stuff at the time. And at the time, I was very devoid of God. I didn't believe anymore. If anything, I believed more in the darker side. I was listening to a lot of heavy metal. I was very living out my sin. I cheated on her before. I was, consumed with sex with her. We drank, we did drugs together. And that relationship lasted for 2 years. And by the end of that relationship, I completely lost myself. I was strung out on drugs and alcohol. She left me. I mean, we left each other. Um, I hadn't made any music. I had totaled my car on a way to go buy drugs in a snowstorm. My nice Mercedes I bought when I hadn't made all that money. And I remember going back home and I didn't have a car anymore and no music career, no girlfriend. And I'm walking home from the bar, my pants are falling down, I'm smoking cigarettes, and I just start crying. I'm like, what the fuck's going on? What happened to my life? Not realizing that the enemy, Lucifer, had been planting seeds ever since I was a child to get me to this moment, to this weakest moment where I was contemplating killing myself. But mind you guys, Jesus was there the whole time. I always, no matter what I say, I always believed. And basically, at that time, I didn't care about my life anymore. And I decided to start getting into hustling, I'll just say, to pay my bills. And this was like the darkest 6 months of my life. I was involved with people that worship Santeria and a lot of that demonic shit to get rich. And it was real. This friend of mine told me, I pray to the devil's going to make me rich like this. And at the time, I was watching a lot of John Ramirez, and his story was starting to make sense to me. And it just didn't feel right. And I was making all this fast money. I was living a life that wasn't mine. I wasn't making music. I was around people that wanted to bring out all of my demons, all of my sinful ways. And I remember one night, many nights, I would go on benders and I would just cry, because I was so depressed. But one night, um, but one night, I think God could feel my desperation in my soul that I was so broken. And I felt the Holy Spirit enter my apartment. And mind you, I had been up for like a day and a half doing drugs all by myself, drinking, listening to music. And I sat down and I was thinking about all my family members that died because that's something I would routinely do. And I would cry because I missed them so much. And It's gonna sound crazy, but I remember closing my eyes and I felt all of my family members as angels coming down around me, and this encompassing feeling of just love and like the warmest hug that I ever could feel. And I broke down on my knees and started crying. And I said, Lord, if you save me from this, I'll never turn my back on you. And it's not like Jesus was right there speaking to me, but something came over my mental and it said that this is over. It's going to take some time and it's going to be very hard, but I promise you it'll be worth it. The next day, I called my uncle, the one who had lost his mom to liver cirrhosis, my grandmother's sister, and he had the financial means to help me, and he was my guardian angel, and he's one of the best men I've ever met. He's a former Air Force, Special Forces, just one of the best kind of guy you could know. Just give you the shirt off his back, the food off his table, and starve for his family, and he just took care of me. He was like that father that I needed to save me. And my uncles were gone; they were dead, and he's all I had, you know. And he uh, he got me into a place called Treehouse Recovery, and I remember just feeling so grateful because I prayed for so many nights that just Lord, please just get me into a treatment center that can really help me. That can I don't want to be this way anymore. I don't want to be in this pain. And he sent me to exactly where I needed to go. That was 2 years ago. At that treatment center, I woke up every day, 6 a.m. I was with a group of awesome, 8 awesome guys. We didn't always love each other, like each other, but we loved each other. And we worked out together. We did therapy together. And Treehouse Recovery is a place of cutting edge science, trauma therapy, exercise therapy, everything that I'm about. And taught me what it means to live and how to excel as a man. They weren't very spiritual in that aspect, but we had brotherhood. And I didn't know that after I left Treehouse that I would be invited to another place because shortly after I left that rehab, I had a brief relapse. And Treehouse sent me, one of the guys from Treehouse, Jacob, he sent me to, he owns Hope Guides. Shout out to Hope Guides. It's a sober living treatment program in Boise, Idaho, Nampa, Idaho, connected to another treatment called Eagle Creek Ranch. And when I got sent out to Boise, that was scary for me because the last treatment I was in Oregon, you know, I could drive home, but Boise, you know, that's a 10-hour drive and I got an older car, so I can't just leave. And I remember going out there and just the owner there, you know, we went to 7 meetings a day and he was all about God, man. And he used to tell me, he's like, Zarek, man, you're too in your head, bro. He's like, you need to speak to God more. And I was like, man, what do you mean? I don't know what you mean because I just wasn't there. I just wasn't there with God yet. And you know, when I left Treehouse, they told me, you know, one of my biggest issues is my spirituality. They said you're too in your head. You're fucking cerebral. You're smart, but that's going to be your downfall. And so God, my brother had a premonition. You know, when I came home and relapsed, he said I had a dream, man. He said I had a dream that you died, and there was nothing I could do to save you. And my mom told me, you know, she was like, I don't want you to die, son. And that was after I was sober for 7 months and I came home and relapsed. And God came with another blessing to save my life. And my insurance hadn't run out. And my friend Jacob gave me an opportunity to go out to Idaho. And Andrew called me, the owner there. And he was so welcoming and warming. And I was scared. But, you know, I got on that plane with my last $300 and I left. And my first night there, you know, I went in the gym and I was just crying through my whole workout because I felt so grateful to have another chance at this. And my brother told me he had another dream. And he said, this is even before I went to Boise. He said, I had a dream. And in the dream, you were in a beautiful valley. And, you know, that you were finally free. And ever since then, you know, my life changed. I moved back home. I had a few other short relapses, you know, briefly. And, but I learned from them. and the worst was over for me. And I got on the medication I needed, got on the therapy, and my life really started to change when I got into church. And I started going to church about a year ago. Beautiful church out here called Capital Christian Center, um, ran by Dave Mitten. And I used to go to church, and I used to like think that the worship was silly and these stupid Christian songs. And I used to hate going to church, you know? And God had to take me through all that hell for me to understand the power of church. And luckily, I have a close friend named Steve Knight who who helped me out, and he just said, "Man, there's nothing quite like what you're gonna get here." And long story short, I ended up getting baptized on Saturday, and for the first time, I was able to lift my hands and worship like I never did before, and I just felt that love, and it's 100 times more pure than any drug, any alcohol, any sex, anything I ever chased. And where I'm getting at, you guys, is I hadn't put out music for 4 years. And mind you, I've been doing music my whole life. I thought I was done, and I did a vision board like 6 months ago, and on the vision board, something told me to put a platinum record on there. I said, "Why? You're done with music." And my gut was like, "Just put it on there anyways." So I did. And you know, I had this Holy Spirit came in me and told me I need to write gospel music. And I've always had a really good voice. And I made a song called The Only One. And I just asked the Lord to open up as many doors as possible. And I just released the video. It's been shared on 3 major TikTok accounts, over 3 million followers. YouTube has about 10,000 views, and it's starting to just bubble. And I just want to ask you guys to go check out that song, and I hope that my testimony helps inspire somebody else out there um, to change their life. And my final thing that I wanted to reveal to you guys was the thing that really changed is when I asked the Lord into my heart about 7 months, like a year ago, actually. I said, "Lord, you've shown me all these things, but I've never seen you. I've never seen the devil. I've never seen anything tangible. I need to see something." And 2 weeks passed, and I didn't nothing. And I wear like sleep tape, and to keep my mouth closed at night. And one day I wake up and I'm in a full paralysis, and I can't breathe, and my mouth is taped. And I hear this really creepy, eerie frequency at the edge of my bed, and I said, "What the fuck is that?" And it's like a radio tuning. And then all of a sudden I hear these demonic voices like you hear in like those demonic possessions. And they start blasphemizing Jesus. They just call him every name in the book. And without even thinking, I rose up and I started screaming over the tape that Jesus was coming at the top of my lungs. And they ran, they left. And the paralysis left, and I said, "Holy shit, what the hell just happened?" First thing I noticed, the biggest lesson I could tell you guys from my demonic encounter was demonic energy is weak. They are weak. That's the number one thing. And that Jehovah God, the Holy Spirit, is the true power. And ever since then, I've never looked back. And you know, that's my testimony. I hope that it reached somebody today. Um, I love you guys, and you know, just pray that you share this message with somebody. And I'm going to lead us out in prayer for everyone watching. Dear Heavenly Father, Lord, I just ask that you bless everyone watching this video to be a blessing to others and to share their testimonies here in the comment section with anyone that will listen. I pray that my song, The Only One, reaches broken people like me who thought that their life was over. And I hope that you breathe life into them through the music and through this video. In Jesus' name, amen.